Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tractor Brewing's inaugural Millennial Morticians with ABQ Brews. Yay! My name's Gail, Rubin. I am the doyen of death and the coordinator of the Before I Die in Mexico Festival. I'm also an author and speaker, bringing a light touch to what many consider a dark subject. And this is our second annual festival, but it's the first time we've put together a panel of 30-something funeral directors to talk about what they do, and you can ask them any questions you want, well, about the funeral business, death and dying, those sorts of things. I did want to give a shout out. Well, thank you to Tractor Brewing for having us here today. We do call this Millennial Morticians with ABQ Brews, so all of our morticians do have ABQ Brews from Tractor Brewing. I'm drinking the honey wheat, something honey wheat. It's that good. Haymaker, yes. And I see all of our morticians have different glasses and different colors, so they're going to tell us what they're drinking too. Do want to give a shout out before we get started to the sponsors who make this all possible, including EternityGardens.com, which is a website where you can find a final resting place for the cremated remains of your loved ones. National Guardian Life Insurance Company, French Funerals and Cremations, Morris Hall Estate Planning Attorneys, Estate Pros, who are people who can help you shut down those estates, Passages International, which provides biodegradable and eco-friendly funeral products to the funeral industry, and they're based here in Albuquerque, Legacy Concierge, helps you manage your digital assets, and Zia Trust, a trust company here in Albuquerque. So, with that, let's meet our Millennial Morticians!
Hello, my name is Jody Herrington. I am the general manager of Strong-Thorne Mortuary, Fairview Cemetery, and Puerta Cremation and Burial. I am brand new to these guys. I came on in August, and I'm incredibly honored and pleased to be with the oldest funeral home in New Mexico. Can't get over how beautiful the building is. I'm a big supporter of eco-friendly and green funerals, so that is what I will be hoping to bring to the Strong-Thorne and Fairview entities that I am now pleased to be in charge of. Thank you very much.
Yay!
My name is Eric. I'm a licensed embalmer in French Funerals Cremations.
Guys, I need you.
Oh, yeah, like this.
You like that?
My name is Aaron Moore. I'm a licensed embalmer over at French Funerals and Cremations. I've been with the company for almost a year, and I have an extensive history with forensic photography in the past, working with OMI, and also assisting pathologists with autopsies and whatnot. So I think what I really hope to bring to this industry is compassion, a discerning eye, and that's really it.
And what are you drinking? And what are you drinking?
The berry cider. It's delicious.
And I'm drinking the Pilsner.
Hello, my name is Christine Garcia, and I work at Riverside Funeral Home. I am new to the funeral industry, but I'm definitely interested in educating people about death and having these uncomfortable conversations that we tend to avoid. I'm also interested in green burials and natural funerals, and I'm drinking the nitro milk stuff.
Welcome
Welcome to the mortuary. Hi, my name is Michael Garcia. I am currently drinking the Almanac IPA. It's my favorite beer. I always get it. Cheers. 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 Cheers, everybody. 6 feet above ground, right?
All right.
And I work for Salazar Funeral Homes. We're down there on 3rd Street between Lead and Cole. I welcome you all to come in, get your pre-needs done if you ever need it. We're celebrating 100 years this year. We opened in 1918 and this is our 100th year. So yeah, 4 generations. I'm not a member of the family, I just work there. My capacity at the funeral home is I pretty much do everything. I cremate people, I arrange with families, I pick them up from their homes, I direct funerals, I help people get pre-needs figured out, although I don't have an insurance license. Help them get it figured out. I have occupational licenses for directing and for embalming. I'm currently going to Amarillo College to obtain my full FSP. That's an important aspect. So we have multiple licensures here in New Mexico. We have the funeral service intern, which pretty much allows you to do everything except sign a death certificate. So my goal is 2 more years of school so I can sign a death certificate. It's a big thing, right? I went to UNM before that. I hold some good feedback here. I hold a Bachelor's of Science in Evolutionary Anthropology and Evolutionary Psychology with a minor in Fine Arts. So all these things played over into the field that I'm now in. At least I feel they do. And yeah, I helped out in the autopsy suite. That's how I met Mr. Aaron Farr. And then sure enough, he found his way into the funeral business. So yeah, my job is to compassionately care for people, which I hope I do. I met with families earlier today and usually up all night, getting people from wherever they may be. And I really enjoy embalming, although I think the practice is a little outdated. So I do really love restoring people. The restorative arts is my favorite part of the job. And so yeah, that's about it for me. Thank you guys.
In fact, we did just have a tour of the Office of the Medical Investigator this afternoon. We had 30 people show up, and they certainly got an eyeful. You want to talk a little bit, Aaron and Michael, who worked at OMI. What happens there? What role does OMI play, the Office of Medical Investigator? And if either of you want to chime in about that too, about what it's like being a funeral director and having to work with a body that's gone to the autopsy suite.
I'll talk a little bit more about the funeral aspect of it, and then I'll pass it off to Aaron for the OMI part. He worked there a lot longer and had a greater capacity there than I ever did. I was a student job, and I only held it for a few months. So, Office of Medical Investigators, they're there to make sure that you find out what the cause of death is. That's their main function. There they do CT scans, so hopefully they don't have to autopsy and cut into the body. So that's hopefully their last thing they have to do. So in the mornings, I'd wake up and be there at 5:30 to run a whole litany of people through the CT scan and see what's going on, if we can figure it out through that alone. A bunch of medical investigators and what's the guy who checks out the photos called there? Do you remember? No, the other guy in the big meeting.
Just the chief.
Through the CT scans, though, that guy. Radiologist, there we go. So hopefully they can figure it out, and if not, then they go through all the crime records, medical histories. They have access to everything. They're kind of crazy in that aspect. And then, yeah, the autopsy. So they take out the organs, they do thin slicing, they try to eyeball whatever's going on and do some histology. On the funeral side of it...
Wait, what's histology?
Histology is where you go through tissues.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. And then, the urine tests and all that stuff. On the funeral side of it, though, you got to restore that person and looking how they once were. And so, they've removed the brain, believe it or not. So if you want to die of natural causes, is what I'm telling you guys. Live well. And so, yeah, you got to suture up the head, you got to embalm what we call a 6-point. So there's only certain arteries left because they removed everything, and you're embalming through those. And yeah, you're trying to get some color into them. You got to suture up the head, and then I often complain to them about cutting far enough behind the ear along the hairline because even though someone's head is resting on a pillow, I don't want family members to really have that image in their head as the last time they see them. There's a lot of restorative art that goes over there, and die of natural causes. I'll pass it off to Aaron.
So that was pretty thorough. The one thing that I think is important to note is that OMI really does help us to figure out the why. And oftentimes a lot of families are upset because maybe they think they know the why or they don't want to wait for it. And the other thing that OMI does is they serve as an educational facility, utilizing the UNM School of Medicine. So a lot of the work they do, in addition to providing families closure, is to provide information for, they're doing research every day. Most of the autopsies are actually done by forensic fellows or forensic pathologists that are doing a fellowship or a residency. So they have very specific goals while they're doing those autopsies. So it's kind of a dual purpose. So where maybe a loved one died from an overdose, an accidental overdose, the purpose that autopsy is serving, even though you can just test the blood and find opiates or whatever it is that they killed them, the purpose that optoxy is serving is allowing them to really look into the body and see if there's any other signs, in the body of that overdose. And a lot of those statistics actually help the investigator to figure out a probable cause of death prior to that person ever leaving the scene. So a lot of the times the no autopsy cases that you go through there are able to be skipped and just have an external examination done because we have enough statistics to go off of to show that that person most likely died from heart issues because of their age and whatnot, whatever the circumstances might be. So they're definitely an educational facility. The one thing that's really tricky is finding a balance between, like you said, what they do and what we do. A lot of the time, the examination might have surprises for us. They might, if somebody was hit by a car, they might need to do a dissection of the leg that greatly impacts our restoration. So we might have to do more restorative work that the family doesn't even see. But what it does is it creates a more quality, comprehensive embalming or whatever prep we're doing. So it's important to kind of find that balance between serving the family on that end and also what we do.
Jody or Christine, do you have anything to add?
Sure. So I work more on the funeral end of things, and we go pick up bodies from OMI. A lot of the time they are posted, so they have been autopsied. And it really is an honor to be able to restore these people because it is somebody's loved one. This is someone's grandmother. This is somebody's brother. And it's really an honor to be able to restore these people and try to make them look as good as they possibly can for the families to see, a final time. Or even if the families aren't seeing them, just getting them ready for a cremation or, whatever they have going on. It's just very nice to be able to take care of these people and make them look good one final time. It's their last journey, and it's very, very special to be a part of that.
Great. So does our audience have questions you'd like to ask of our panel?
I have a question.
Yes.
So there's been some side conversations among participants to the festival discussing why do we still do embalming so much when it seems like it's not necessary and leeches and why we're still doing embalming when it leaches so many chemicals into the soil and seems to be unnecessary. So the rumor is that it's because you guys want to make more money. How do you respond to that?
Well, The amount of money we make off of an embalming is fairly nominal if you weigh it against the amount of work that goes into it. It's not some random person off the street who's doing this. It's someone who's taking the time to learn a craft. It's not just something that you can do. You have to train extensively to do it properly and respectfully. So the amount of time that's gone into all of us being trained to properly, respectfully, and beautifully embalm somebody grossly outweighs the amount of money we're making off of it. The amount of money we make off of it also pays for the chemicals. It pays for the machine, which doesn't last forever. These are multiple $1,000 machines that are used to introduce the fluid into the body. The prep room itself is incredibly expensive. So the amount that a funeral home charges for a traditional style embalming, let alone a autopsy case, is in direct proportion to what is fair to charge for an embalming. And you'll see that most funeral homes charge roughly about the same, because we've all figured out that this is what it's going to take to keep the lights on. I rent an apartment. I don't live a fancy lifestyle, so this is not a money-making scheme, I guarantee it. I'm nowhere close to becoming a rich person. So I think it's important to recognize that, A, yes, embalming is kind of going by the wayside, and the people that choose it, they choose it for a multitude of reasons, whether it's because of religion or wanting to spend time with their loved one one last time. And maybe that New Mexico statute of a half an hour, maybe that's not long enough. Maybe they need that time and they need to say goodbye, and it's going to take more than a half an hour. So,
Could you explain that?
sure.
Can I pick it up here?
I'll just explain the statute. In New Mexico, there is a law in the books that says if someone, for health reasons, if somebody who's passed away is going to be seen by more than 10 people or for more than a half an hour, they must be embalmed. Otherwise, they can be kept under climate control care or refrigeration, and that's suitable. But for some people, that 30 minutes is not enough, and maybe your family is bigger than 10 people.
And then you were asking about practices too, and I just wrote a paper. I'm in school, mortuary school right now, so I just written a paper about this. And statistics said last year that 60% of people thought about getting a green burial, because that's part of your question, right? Is all this embalming fluid going in the ground and stuff like that. Just the environmental impact of it. And that's the thing, is 60% of people are only considering green burial. And I will agree with, basically there needs to be legislature. I think a body could be out for more than 30 minutes, no problem. With, if we do the bathing and disinfecting and things that go along with it like that. But, people opt for embalming so much of the time. You see it particularly in Christian practices. The idea kind of dates back to that you're going to rise again when Jesus returns. And so a lot of people do it out of that reason, so that the body, stays good. I mean, they make gasketed caskets for that reason. That'll preserve the body longer once you're interred into the ground. So I think people need to stop we need legislation to change partially, and we need people to just get out of the tradition of always wanting embalming. Maybe have an hour out, that, probably suffice for time, and then close the casket. And then just get people away from the tradition of it. They're just really used to it. But then you're going to have to get used to seeing gray bodies. People don't stay nice colors once they're passed. You can do makeup and things like that, but it only goes so far. So, and then there's lots of green alternatives. There's bamboo caskets, there's wicker caskets. There's a whole bunch of things. The Puerta burial grounds, it's out by Berlin, but they're completely green. They don't allow any metal caskets, and we don't allow headstones to stand. So you see the trend happening, but it's happening really, really slow at this point. So
Yeah, La Puerta is a beautiful place to consider if you are considering green or eco-friendly burial for yourself or a family. You can pre-plan, and they're the only Green Burial Council certified natural burial ground in New Mexico. So they've done their homework, they've done the legwork to make sure that what they're doing is in conjunction with keeping that place pristine. And they do a wonderful job. They're wonderful people.
And in fact, that's a great point because we are doing drawings for the festival for 2 burial plots at La Puerta. And I have drawing slips if you want to enter the drawing. And everybody who enters the drawing gets a goodie bag of materials from the festival, including my TV interview series, A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die. So I'll distribute those.
There was one more thing I wanted to add on the tail end of that, which is just a little devil's advocate, extra pro embalming kind of opinion. There are a lot of things that embalming can help with, a lot of medical conditions that can really help give family closure. If somebody passes away and their skin is very jaundiced, they're very yellow, and that's just not a memory a lot of family members want to have of that person. One benefit of embalming is, if done properly, we can actually strip the body of that pigmentation and restore that person to a more familiar form than they were the last time they were seen in the hospital with sickly and whatnot. Same with other conditions like edema. When somebody's completely swollen because they just have so much edema, we can actually chemically strip that from the body and make that person look more normal. And on the flip side, if somebody's very emaciated because of their illness, we can actually kind of plump them up. A lot of the compliments that we'll get on our embalmings at French is, this looks like my mom 20 years ago, this doesn't look like her last week. And so I think it's very powerful when you see it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about any changes in the embalming fluids? Is there anything more green coming along?
Yeah, so we go.
There are a couple companies that have developed formaldehyde-free fluids. They don't give the exact same results, but they certainly do the job. They definitely do the job. So there are companies out there that are actively trying to create a more eco-friendly form of embalming by stripping away the formaldehyde or formalin aspect of it.
Okay, do you provide that alternative?
Yes. Yes, we do. So if a family has opposition to the formaldehyde, not many people know too much about it, so it's very, very rare. But if a family has an opposition to it, then the opportunity is there to use a formaldehyde-free product.
Do you lay that out for these people as far as a choice, or do they have to ask?
My stance is I want to give enough information so that they feel comfortable with the decisions without overloading someone. So if I can tell through our conversation that they have issues with certain things like formaldehyde or with the increased amount of chemicals that formaldehyde leaches into the ground, then I will mention it. But if they don't seem to have an issue during our talk, then I'm not going to bring it up and overload them.
Anybody else?
Nailed it!
Yeah, you usually tell us through the conversation, especially with the interest of where they like to be buried. I mean, it's all pretty straightforward in the conversation. People that know about it are very expressive.
Yeah, I rarely get families who are concerned about environment. They're kind of caught up in the moment. They're thinking about their loss, the tragedy of it, services. The last thing on most people's head is environment when the services happen.
That's another decision.
Yeah, exactly. And you do feel like you overwhelm them a lot. Like I'm going a lot of information, actually really quick. I'm giving you a to-do list, and then, you know, funerals aren't cheap. It's a big expense all at once that not a lot of people plan for. So, yeah, main thing is you're trying to not overwhelm them with everything, you know, so I agree.
I'm curious, I'm curious about statistics between cremation and burial in Albuquerque.
I just, like I said, I'm in school first, so I just wrote a
There's
paper on
panel
this.
there, maybe
Yeah. So cremation is way on the rise. Cremations are, it used to be half and half, right now we're at like 54% cremations. And in Albuquerque, I'd say it's about half and half still. We have a tremendous Catholic population here in Albuquerque, so a lot of people opt for burial. Although, because the Catholic Church is now cool with cremations, a lot of people are having dealings with the cremation following, and then internment after that. So I definitely say it's half and half here from my experience. I don't know about you guys.
I would say with French, we have Cremation Society of New Mexico along with us, so we're probably about 60-40. But the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that cremation doesn't mean no involvement either. So we try to make sure that people know that they can still have the service they want and still become involved, have an involvement take place, and still become cremated if they need.
Thank you.
Christine?
I want to chime in with that. So cremations are definitely one of the more popular options here that I've noticed. But also something that's available is a witness cremation where you can actually view your loved one before they go into what we call the retort. And you can have that final moment, you can see your loved one go in. And that's also an option for you too. So it's I think it's a very unique experience, and a lot of people don't know about it, but it is an option. There are options available for you to view your loved one one final time before cremation.
You said witness cremation, that's what it's called?
Yes, ma'am, witness cremation.
And pushing the button when someone goes into the retort?
Yes, that's also an option too, and some people find it very powerful, or it helps give you closure to push that button, to have your loved one go in and know that you're the final person to kind of guide them on their way. And I think it's a very beautiful way to get closure, and I think it's a very beautiful way to get closure and help grieve.
I'll point something else out there for witnessing cremation. I've helped families with hundreds of them, if not more. We have one in our building down at Salazar, and we built it specifically for that reason, is for people to be part of it. And people want to opt out of it a lot of the time, and it's such a moving thing to be a part of that my go-to line for it is, in Asia, nearly everyone gets cremated, mainly due to space and population, right? They have some of the most expensive niches in the world. And so everyone there witnesses cremation. It's just part of their culture. And so I try to just let people know you're not weird if you want to be a part of that. It's a totally normal thing, and it's just like, I put it on the same as putting it on the ground, being part of that aspect of it. Nearly the same thing, and it's moving. I've sat with families, held their hands, guided them to the button, and it's a good thing to be a part of.
Additional thoughts on that? No? You're good? Okay. Yeah, question.
Do you have any experience with, I don't know the actual terminology, but body farms?
I do.
I'm curious. What was the question?
The question is, do any of us have experience with body farms? I have actually pre-registered to donate to a body farm. The University of Tennessee has accepted my application. I have dreams of either being in the trunk of a car or in a tree. I want one of the two. I don't know if they'll do that for me. I put it on my request. Maybe yes, maybe no. One can dream. There are schools locally you can donate to. UNM is one of them. You can
Explain what a body farm is.
A body farm is different from a school that accepts body donations. A body farm is more of a forensics field laboratory where they put different bodies in different natural and kind of some unnatural situations, cars, trunks of cars. And they're studying the progression of decomposition from the moment they place that body in that situation. So you'll see for the University of Tennessee, there are bodies throughout the farm that are surrounded by cages to prevent vermin from getting at them, but to allow bugs. There are also some bodies that are not in cages to allow the vermin and the wildlife to get at them, so that the scientists and the students can study what's going on as time progresses with each body under these different circumstances. To my knowledge, New Mexico does not have any legal body farms, maybe some illegal, I don't know, I don't judge. Do you? Just don't do it to me. I prefer to go to the University of Tennessee. But New Mexico does have the privilege of having a very well-respected body donation program, that you can donate your body to science and know that your body is going to be used to progress science.
In the
You
back.
first.
Okay. So I work at a funeral home, and I see like a lot of people that have donated bodies to science. And I read this book about different ways that it helps learn things. So I really like to encourage people to donate their body. I'm personally a organ donor. I just wanted to know what your guys' opinion is, because I know a lot of people, even people that I don't know, that see these bodies all the time. They're like, oh, this is awful, like the way they do it. But to me, I don't see it as awful because they're helping. So, you know, yeah, their bodies stitched up a little bit differently, but this is helping somebody not have to go through this later. So I would encourage donations. I just want to know what you guys think.
So you work at a funeral home too?
Yeah, actually, we're seeing.
Oh, cool. All right.
Hey, I have a question for you, Aaron. What do people get taken from when they donate their body the most?
I would say the corneas.
Oh yeah, corneas, huh?
Yeah.
What else?
For a short stint, I worked for New Mexico Lions Eye recovered corneas, and I would say that that was probably the thing that we recovered most. Second to that, I'd say skin, probably skin, then bone, and then any sort of like heart valves or anything more specific. Sometimes if they're young enough, they can be live organ donors if they're brain dead but their body's alive. So, like many of you were saying, I highly encourage anybody who's considering being a donor to allow that, because it helps a lot of people.
Thank you, Aaron.
It's important to remember that if you're an organ donor or a tissue donor or a long bone donor, you can still have an open casket funeral. It's not something that will preclude you from having this very special moment for your family if that's what they choose. You can also be cremated and no one will ever see you. That's our job, to make the donation disappear. And every person that I've embalmed who's been a tissue or a long bone donor or cornea or whatever, if they sent their brain to the brain study in New York, everyone that I've embalmed, it's been such a nice thing to see that this person, their final act in the world was to give to somebody else. They recognize that they don't need it anymore, but somebody does. And it's such a lovely thing to see that is an ultimate act of generosity, that you're taking of yourself and giving to others.
You know, why don't you talk about the difference between donating your organs and donating your body to science?
Okay, so donating your organs, that's mainly just for medical purposes. Now for science, they really get free reign over what goes on with you. So I was heavily involved with the anthropology department at UNM, and people who donate to UNM, their bodies generally go there. And they just kind of boil everything off and keep the bones for a bone collection there.
The anthropology department, really?
We had a bones class where we went over every bone in the human body, its function, its evolutionary purpose, things like that. And I had a variety of New Mexicans to go over and rebuild their skeletons. So another purpose oftentimes is doctors get to practice surgeries on cadavers before they do them in real life. So when you're donating your body to science, they kind of get free reign in what happens there. And it could be practicing or just for anatomical studies. You could just end up in a science lab forever or whatever, embalmed, so that they could just lay it open and be like, look, here's this and that, and there's that, and there's your adrenal gland right there. It's a hard guy to
Because of
find.
that anyone who gets surgery is still.
It was helpful. I mean,
It's helpful.
I've looked at plenty, and they are helpful in training purposes. You may end up at a mortuary school as well. Mortuary schools have bodies that they keep on display so people can learn and study and just kind of learn the whole venous and arterial system. So if you want to donate to your organs for medical purposes, that's one thing, and then donating to science is a whole other. And then you may be cremated following their use. So.
Well, there's a difference between whole body donation to get a free cremation and donating your organs as indicated on your driver's license.
Right, your family will get your body back if you're an organ donor. For the University of Tennessee, there is a clause at the very bottom, and you have to acknowledge that if you donate your body to the University of Tennessee, your family will not get you back. Once they're done with your body, they will keep your bones, and your bones will become part of their archive. So they'll cremate everything else, but your bones are theirs, and it's theirs forever. So you have to acknowledge that your family gets nothing back. Some schools will eventually give you back, your family back cremated remains, and it is a free cremation. But it's a lot. The family will wait quite some time for that because it takes a long time to go through 150 pounds a person.
Yeah.
We had a question, Matt.
So I just wanted to add to the donation. It's not a question. I just heard this book once that when they donate the body, they also use it for car testing. So they'll put the actual body in the car and use it as kind of like a test dummy to see how airbags and different things affect actual human bone and human flesh to help figure out how to make cars safer too. So donating your body can
You could be a crash test dummy, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not like, and it's like a good thing too, now we know how to make cars safer, we know what actually happens to our body, not just plastic, dummy, that's not what we're made out of.
Yeah.
So, I think that's another cool thing, donating your body.
And then we had a question in the front, ready?
Follow-up questions on the body farm. Is Tennessee the closest? Is that why you chose it? And did you figure out transportation already? How much would that cost?
Tennessee is not the closest. It's the most well-renowned and is the grandfather of body farms. They put out some of the most recognizable research. There's a lot of research coming out of that school. I also have a pre-need for myself. I've got a little pot of money to pay for me getting there. I'm currently shipping a body to most parts of the U.S. is about $600 through major carriers. Southwest is my carrier of choice because they're such nice people when I talk to them. I've done a pre-need. In my pre-need is the container. There's also a little pot of money for excess things like death certificates, permits if necessary, because pre-needs can follow you across the country. if you set it up here, you don't have to die here. I can die wherever I want and use it wherever I want. So I've got my transportation, my container, the funeral home picking me up and holding me. I've got all these things taken care of, and then a pot of money for incidentals.
And how is that handled financially?
The great thing about cremating is you can do payments because, like I said, I rent. I'm not rich, so I make payments. I narrowed it down to as few payments as possible.
It's an insurance policy.
It's a special kind of insurance that is more like a bank account than an insurance policy. So it's not like buying a whole life or a term life policy where you pay money in, and if you die during that time, maybe you get your money, maybe you don't. Or if you outlive your policy, then your money's gone. This type of insurance, you pay your money in, it is your money. And should I ever become a destitute person and have to go on Medicaid later on, this is not considered an asset in the eyes of Medicaid. So they can't strip it from me. It's always there. So everyone, get your freedom. Talk to him.
Is there not a rule if you're being shipped across state lines about embalming?
Not at all, because Jewish people get shipped across state lines.
Okay, so it has to be done within a period of time.
The rules are, no, it doesn't even have to be done within 24 hours. It can be done days later, should you need that time, as long as you are in climate controlled care and then shipped with ice packs or ice.
That's right, because there's a special wrapping that you can do to a body.
Well, we call it a combo. It's the container that serves as both a shipping container and a casket, an impromptu casket for the duration of your trip. Put some ice packs in your armpits, on your groin, under your neck, under your torso. Keep you nice and cool for your trip, and by the time you get to where you're going, your ice packs have melted, but you're still good to go.
And your double bag.
And your double bag.
I have another question.
Sure.
I can't see what's behind me. And I'm wondering what your awareness is about the people that come to you in planning for the event. Is this still a pretty low experience? I mean, most people haven't planned. Are you getting a better rise in people that are aware of planning?
Hop the microphone.
I don't have a lot of experience with advanced planning. I'm mostly in our care facility. However, what I do know is that with French, our advanced planning department is actually on the rise. We have a lot of people that we're helping pre-plan, and it isn't always a grim experience. A lot of the times people are taking they're taking control of that event, and it feels empowering, even if they're sick and they have terminal illness. A lot of the times it's uplifting for the family to work out these details with them. We also recommend it too because it takes a lot of the pressure off of family when they come in after an event. They can just focus on grieving and what happened, which is more important than deciding maybe they want this casket or that casket, or maybe they want a rosary, or maybe they weren't so religious in their last years. So I think it's very empowering. We're actually seeing a rise with advanced planning, so it's pretty good.
I put it to a lot of people. I do the arrangements often, and if someone doesn't have a pre-plan, it's 2 to 6 hours sometimes, depending on the latter nature of your funeral. And we're picking out a lot of things. I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm figuring out death certificates, which has a lot of vital record information, where they were born. I planned with someone earlier today who didn't know the names of her mom's parents. And had we had more foresight, we could have gotten birth certificates or something, so they could put that on a death certificate, especially for genealogies, if you're trying to find your family history. So if if someone's pre-planned, I can get them in and out of the funeral home in less than an hour. Which, especially during the time of grieving, you don't want to be staring at my face while you're grieving. You know? I mean, it's not bad, but you should be with your family. So I highly recommend everyone pre-plans, particularly if you want cremation. So cremation, we like next of kin to sign off on it, on our cremation authorization, and not all families get along. So if you come in and pre-plan and get me to notarize it, I am a notary, by the way, then you've authorized your own cremation, your funeral's figured out, they just come in, sign some documents, I say, okay, this is what your mom wanted, we do that, okay, let's do it. That's pretty much it. It's all paid for, they don't have to worry, they go home, they send us some pictures, and we run an obit, and their funeral happens just the way they want it. And we don't have to track down, you know, your brother you haven't talked to in 20 years that you hate. And I've had to put people in niches in a casket, even though their wishes were to be cremated, because the brothers don't talk anymore. And that may be what your mom wanted, but I'm going to follow the letter of the law. So unfortunately, you're not getting cremated unless you talk to your brother. And if you don't know how to find them, it's just not happening, you know? So if you really want things to happen the way you like them, and not be held up by laws or family issues or this or that, or money, you know, I see New Mexico's poor. So put some money aside for it, because it's going to happen one day. I just wrapped up my mom's pre-planning just for that reason, you know. I never know where I'll be in 15, 20 years or where she'll be, and I at least know what my own mom wants. We talked about it. It wasn't that, because of my job, it wasn't that hard. We joke about it all the time, but I got hers figured out and my aunt's, and I'll figure out mine soon too. I don't even know what I want really, so I'm gonna leave it up to my family members at this point. But one day I'll figure it out. You know, we have a question in the back.
Well,
I was just going to say that I think it's really important that people do address death and dying of ourselves and our loved ones, because it is going to happen. There should never be any unexpected deaths, but they do occur. And I think this is a conversation that people need to have. We need to talk about this. We talk about so many other subjects, but this is something that tends to be taboo and kind of pushed to the side. And it is important to let your loved ones know what you want, and also to know what they want for themselves. So even though it is uncomfortable and it might be sad at times, it is very important to address this issue, because in the long run, it's going to make things easier for you at the end.
When it's paid for, it's set in stone. That's pretty much it. Pre-planning, I can pre-plan all day long. I could do a parade with 25 notes and my entire high school brass band. But if I don't pay for it, it's not happening. I mean, seriously. So the difference is, pre-need is paying for what you want. Pre-planning is saying what you want, which is still vitally important. If you talk to your family and say, you know what, this is important to me, that's wonderful. At least they have an idea. But if you don't have the money to pay for it, then, like I said, you can pre-plan all you want. But
I may be using the word wrong, and very I've been doing this for like 6 months. I'm probably using the word wrong. I feel like I may not be giving French's money, so I know there's money involved. So I get that money. But I guess what I'm trying to say, is there a difference in maybe my terminology is wrong, but I feel like what you're talking about is separate from a funeral home, whereas I know we have a contract with French's and they can get X amount of dollars from us. So is that different, or?
it sounds like your organization and French have worked out a relationship where, and you'll know, where you may have a special program for less financially secure families, where they get a certain set of services for a certain price. And that is a way of pre-planning. That is a method of it, and it's a very good method. It's a wonderful way to guarantee people of lower income a respectful and dignified funeral. So that I think the difference between what you're talking about, pre-planning and a pre-need, may be that income levels are different. Whereas a family may come into a funeral home and say, I want a bronze casket with a traditional burial service and embalming and all the bells and whistles. Whereas what it sounds like you're talking about is a method of guaranteeing lower income families respectable, dignified funerals at a lower cost.
It depends on the situation, because I mean, like, we deal with Medicaid limits and sometimes we get back payments and stuff, so I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, the regulations always change, but with us, it has been that there wasn't a limit on how much you could pre-pay for a funeral. Now there is a limit, which is $1,500, which doesn't get us much, but if there's no limit on a pre-pay, it sounds like that's a little bit of a better route to go, but I've never heard that from my paper. So, how would I go about setting that up? Like, what do I do? How do I start?
Can I chime in here? Okay, so a lot of the times when people are on Medicare and they're going into hospice, they need to make a bunch of money disappear fast. Medicaid, my mistake, sorry. So going on Medicaid, they want you at a certain income, pretty much nothing most of the time.
It's called a spend down.
So at that point, when you need to make money disappear to go on hospice essentially, invest in a funeral at that point. Sometimes you can make $3,000 disappear fast, right? And in order to qualify for stuff like that. And guess what's going to come shortly after hospice? A funeral. And so the best way to make that money disappear, compared to a lot of the other ways, is to make sure that you can have your last rites the way you want them. So that's what you should, before people even get into your hospice or your care unit or your facility, that's what I would recommend. Because, yeah, the vast majority of people going into hospice are on Medicaid. So
That was exactly what I was going to say.
The process of dying is expensive, and the process of death is expensive. So, unfortunately, it's one of those things where if you can pre-plan it, you can set the money aside before you start spending it off. So when it comes to how would you do it, I would say when it comes to pre-needs, I can't do a pre-need for you. I don't know you. The people involved with that person or the person themselves must do the pre-need.
Well, like, if I'm trying to ask you, do I just go to a bank and say, this is what I want? I've never heard this term before. I mean, I wouldn't know, how does one set up an account? That was my main question.
You would talk to a pre-need counselor at the funeral home of choice.
Okay, that was my main question.
Okay, well that was easy.
we can all give you our cards. We all got cards and we'll make sure you can get your needs met.
I brought plenty of cards.
Because, yeah, one of my least favorite topics is insurance and all that kind of stuff, right? That's like the least fun part of the funeral is all the finances. So if you need to figure that out, I'm sure any one of our firms is more than happy to help. And if you already have a contract, you can talk to Aaron, because he works for French's.
And, you know, it's hard to believe, but we've almost been talking about this for an hour now. And I'd like to help wrap it up with, tell us stories of the most creative, uplifting, unusual funerals that you've worked on.
I got one that came to mind immediately. So one day, I did a magician's funeral.
Ooh.
He died kind of abruptly, unfortunately, and sure enough, Albuquerque is a small place, so his daughters were friends of a friend, and they had come in, and we had prayer cards and everything like that, like a normal funeral, but then they came and set up all this magician stuff in our chapel. So there was like a monkey with the tambourines, his magician friends showed up and they were like, can we pass out prayer cards? And I was like, yeah, sure guys, here you go, here's some prayer cards. And then as everyone came in, they were like, here's your prayer card, you know, and it just popped up out of nowhere. They were pulling behind people's ears and stuff. And apparently for magicians, when they die, they have a ceremonial breaking of the wand. And when it broke, stuff exploded out everywhere. There was like confetti that flew out and everything. And yeah, he was also a clown, so he had his clown shoes and all that stuff there. There was 2 clowns present. And yeah, you know, all types of people die, including magicians and clowns. And I know people in the circus have particular funerary rites, where everyone shows up and they have a whole circus show around it. So, I mean, the vast majority I do is Catholic funerals, just because we're in New Mexico. So, and penitentes, I'll point those guys out too. They're the penitents of Christ. So these are guys, this is an old order, and they do this really elaborate, like, I don't know, it's almost like a parade coming in, where they're singing and yelling. They sing in Latin and Spanish. They're kind of unique to New Mexico in that the Catholic Church didn't always serve here, and we have such an old history with Catholicism, but they couldn't reach everywhere, so the penitentes took over. And yeah, they put on an elaborate funeral as well. So I'd say go all out for the elaborate funerals. They're really fun. And you're like, heck yeah, I went to that funeral, you know, afterwards. As opposed to like, oh, it's so sad that person passed, you know. So I'm all for really big, elaborate funerals.
So something interesting that I've seen was a witness cremation by Buddhists. And they all come in, they bring offerings to their loved one, they wear specific colors, and they chant over their loved one multiple times. Everybody sings, it's very beautiful, and then they, you know, send the body on its way. But it's just very nice to see so many people coming together to respect their loved one and to bring these offerings and these gifts and to just really make sure that their last journey is a very positive one. That was, to me, something interesting to see. I don't have any magician stories. How do I follow that up?
Well, I have even less to follow that one up. Most of the time, like I said, I'm in the prep room, so there are very many services that I actually just take part of. But one thing I do a lot is I cover for our transfers department. So I'll go to the homes at the time of death and see the families and take their loved one into our care. And I would agree with you that Buddhist families are a very special occasion. Many times there's 30 people that are there chanting, and everybody has their phones and they're FaceTiming people across the world. And it's just the most beautiful thing I think I've seen. And they send their loved one off with it's like a music box kind of that just has like a small MP3 player almost that just has this chant that just plays and want with their loved one the entire time they're in our care. And we honor it. We keep it with them and we make sure it has batteries and whatnot. But I think it's a very beautiful experience to be a part of.
I am licensed in DC, Idaho, and New Mexico. And in New Mexico, I get a lot of Catholic, but in Idaho, I get a lot of creativity. We've had boats and motorcycles and cars and outdoor funerals and wedding-style funerals and funerals where you don't even know it's a funeral. My favorite was the motorcycle because they rode it out of our chapel, and so our chapel was full of exhaust, and we were like, ah! In DC, there's quite a few Chinese families, and I love their funerals because they believe, I love them on a kind of funny level. They believe that if they don't spend enough money on flowers and bells and whistles, that their loved one will haunt them forever and punish them. And gosh, what a big obligation. So every region has its own fun thing with funerals.
But you know, you also work in DC with the funeral home that does the funerals for presidents.
Yes, I got my apprenticeship at Joseph Galler's Sons, which is the funeral home of presidents. They did John F. Kennedy's funeral, J. Edgar Hoover, they did him. He's not a president, but that's okay. My favorite person that they buried was Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine. And Joseph Galler's son is one of the Triple Crown of the SCI Corporation.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all. This has been such an interesting, illuminating panel. And my audience, please give these guys a big hand.